recording. Now, I didn't get this in yesterday, so I'm going to get it in today. I know I'm going to go over it again, but I won't hammer it down forever, but just enough to when someone watches this on YouTube, because I want to get a combo lesson of the two of these. I and Yo keep on top watch as of right now, team. Let's get into it. Volume lesson, how to read it. I know a lot of traders have a little bit of issues, and to me, I think traders need a little bit of help, maybe a refresher on how to read volume and when it's really necessary to really look at it, and also when to be paying attention to it. Let's see here. Let's get into the first one here. Slide overall, right? Slide number 1. Just taking a look, just from a glance, right? What volume are you looking at? To me, the first thing I'm always looking for is I'm looking at the daily right here. Every time I look at a chart, I pull it up, and I've told you this. Now, I'll kind of briefly, because I can do it relatively quickly, very quickly analyze what's happened intraday, whether it's a 1 minute, 2 minute, 3 minute, whatever time frame I have it in. Usually it's a 1 minute time frame. Of course, if it's my charting, it's always in a 1 minute for the most part. And so, boom, come right in, look at it, and break down just real quickly. But the first thing what I'm doing, as I'm like pulling up Thinkorswim, which most know, it's the 1 year, 1 day is kind of up to the top right. So I'm going to change it. And in the meantime, I'm kind of really briefly breaking down the intraday, just so when I come back to it, I already have a refresher in my mind of what I'm looking at and looking for moving over to the daily. And then boom, go to the 1 year, 1 day, so that I can really read what kind of movement this stock has, what it does essentially overall. And so I can see where the resistance is, where the support is, how much volume come in. You get a gist of how much volume you need to really move, whether it's 5, 10 mil, 20, 30 mil, whatever, to get this big of a move. And these moves right here, where you do see some blue candles or the volume candles, or these are only maybe 1 to 2 mil. So 1 to 2 mil does this much. Maybe it's 10 to 20 or whatever does this big range. You go over here and go, okay, cool. 10 mil-ish or so does this. So you can get a gist of what you need to move. And I'll go through and you'll see a little bit more so as we go through these. You'll get a manner of how it's going to move. Like, okay, today's volume's got this much. Here's where we're going to move to. Like, or where I can see it moving to. We've already got 10 million shares traded in volume. This thing can go bananas today, right? And so notice those with trades when you go back to the 1 year, 1 day, what you're looking for in the volume. And the main thing you're trying to do off the bat is of course, you're doing the resistance and support thing, but then you're also going, how much volume do I need today? What is it going to take to move $3 or $4? What's it going to take to move $5, $10? What's it going to take to move X amount of money, right? What's the range going to be? You can get a gist of that right off the bat with looking at volume, right? Again, no volume, so you're not even worried about these days. You can tell most days are just nothing. That's where we have a lot of tickers. It's not like it's like every day, just, crazy volume. Or not most tickers, especially penny stocks. This is what we're going to see. Very, very little volume in most days. Few and far between, we get these crazy volume days with a lot of volume, right? And so notice when that volume comes in, and again, notice what you need to move, whether it's at 3 mil to move this much, 10 mil to move that much. Another beautiful kind of just looking at the daily in itself, knowing that now that I have the actual volume down here, knowing that you need 25 million shares traded. Now, just going back, like say if you just look at this on another day, you're looking at it again, you're going, okay, cool. You're looking at, say if it's flip-flop, say it's the other way around where this is the 52-week high, but it's literally all the way back here toward the back end of the chart. So I need 25 million shares traded to move this much. I know days where I see close to say 10 million shares traded, I move this much. Of course, always looking at past chart history, upper shadow city, always kind of paying attention to those things, but then noticing the volume, and then that volume, when it comes in, how much you move, then go, okay, cool, here's how much I'm going to move today. If I am going to trade this long, upper shadow city, I'm going to want to get in when this thing starts spiking. I know it can spike if the volume comes in. Secondly, let's, look to the short after that, right? And so those are kind of the areas that I'm always looking for with these right here. The main thing, getting a gist of how much volume do I need to move a certain amount of money. That's why I can tell traders a lot of the time, hey, how much this is going to move, where we can actually move with this, because of what? The volume, what we've done in the past. It shows you the range of what you could possibly move. Another thing Deck always talks about too, besides just going back to looking at your daily, or your daily 1 year, 1 day chart, you want to go to this. What I know Deck brings up all the time, and I bring up all the time as well, is looking at the volume on the daily versus the intraday. So, or I should say the daily versus the average, right? So what do we have on the average daily versus the volume of that day? So say, and it was that big spiking day, we have 25 million shares traded. The average is 132. And obviously, there's not much volume on most days. So you've got to know, wow, that's got a lot. So even one day, even if it's early in the day, we have 13 million or 10 million or even 5 million shares traded, we're way over 132,000, right? And so if you see 132,000 shares traded today, and we're pushing already a million, maybe 2-3 million or whatever in pre-market, we're well over a million in pre-market, this bad boy can definitely move that day. CREX. Here's how I say CRX, but I love looking at this ticker. It's represented so many different setups that I got to use so many different for so many different lessons of mine. Here's another one for the volume. Intraday volume. Now let's get into the intraday volume itself. Actually, the daily. Now back to boom. Okay, there was the 1 year, 1 day. Now we go back and want to break down the chart itself. You've got to notice when volume comes in. It's pretty relevant. More the more you move on. Excuse me. Now early on, look at it, notice in volume. It's really almost here nor there for the most part. You're going, well, yeah, I just want to find my plays and get in and out of them. I'm not noticing the volume. But in the end, you're going to really start noticing where that volume comes in at, where it's real key to notice and get in certain areas, where not to get in on areas. Beautiful, right? Just like I said, what would this say right here? Look at the volume spikes on the wedge breaks and bounces, right? So what that means is, when does most volume come in on plays? On any flag setup for the most part. Wedge flag setup you want to talk about. It's not in the flag. It's during the actual breakout itself, right? When you actually get the pull. Even this small little pull. Look, here's a small, even great example. Look up. Pull. Beautiful spike. Flag. Little bit of volume. Spiking. New big long pull. Lot of volume. Look at this long flag. Volume slowly tapers. And look at this tapering now. Big time, right? Boom. Another pull gets formed. Another breakout. Super duper volume. Look at in the pull how it slowly dies out to the very end. Look at this low volume. Till then we get again, what? Another pop and break. And notice again, then on the bounce, look at the volume come in on the bounce. My beautiful support areas. Old resistance, what? Equals new support. Love it. So notice where that volume comes in at. It's really crucial at times. You're probably not paying attention to a lot of it when you're actually in a trade now. For a lot of newer traders, even if you've only been trading for a year or two even. It takes a while to start really noticing when that volume comes in and what you're typically looking for. And I'm going to get into volume lesson 2 after this because I do have another lesson I want to give, and I thought I'd already recorded this one, and I didn't want to get into this one again today, but I did want to get into it, so I did have it recorded. But then how you kind of read the volume in the candles and what you're looking for actually inside the green candle itself when the green candles form and the burst up. So that's what I wish I had these colored, but they're not. But you're looking for green, and I guarantee you each and every one of these were what? They were green candles because we have green candles to match what? Green volume candles. And so that's where then you see the first volume that would be red down would be the first one. But there's a lot of buying in there because it held up. But I want to start breaking that down as well, how to read the volume intermittently per candle, essentially, each volume candle that is created. And so that's where, again, notice those areas. And I'll kind of take them away so you can see it's pretty night and day out there, team. Beautiful to see. And I'll just kind of step away, kind of do this. Be like, yeah, see? And just notice where the volume spikes come in, on those poles, whatever pole you're looking at, and inside the flag and after the pole, volume dies off, right? Later in the day, beautiful example even later in the day, CREX, beautiful later in the day here, move up. Look at this. Later in the day goes bananas. Where's the volume come in at? And look how crazy the volume is on those spikes of those poles. Pole, massive volume. Candle, look how it dies off tremendously. We go from millions upon millions of shares traded to right around 100,000. Then millions and millions of shares traded to, almost, probably a couple 100,000. Every time, right? How in the flag it dies off, but as soon as it starts popping, woof, next leg up. Notice that's where the volume comes in at, team. When you're whatever you're trading, U-shapes, flag breakouts, whatever it may be, where that volume is coming in at. That is key. And the buying volume when you're looking, or you're looking for shorting volume. Notice the volume surge on what ends up being the pole or our flags, right? I kept saying that 100 million times. It's crazy. Another thing about volume and what to get on the gist of when we want to trade. Why we always talk about it's better to trade in that first hour and a half, 2 hours of the day. Look how much more volume. And again, that's why I love bringing up this ticker right here, this beautiful chart, that it's a ticker that runs all day long. Even has a little pullback at the opening bell, but then runs all the way to 8:32. And we're talking lunch hour, boom. When I start lunch hour commentary, we're still running, hitting new high of day. Up $5 from the low almost, or close to it. Where's still most volume? Even though we're continuing to hold and we're running more, where's most of the volume? First part of the day, right? First hour and a half of the day, that's where most of the volume is. That's why we're always saying, where do you want to trade at? While we're always talking about and suggesting, essentially, like I say down here, trading in the first hour and a half to 2 hours a day. That's where you're going to get the most volume. That's where you're going to get the best chance to get spikes or profitability zone, as I like to call them. Whether they're spikes, of course, you're going long. short, so you get trend line cracks. You know, those trend lines end up being further where they crack a little bit further. Support areas that end up being formed, those can crack a little bit further now. Versus later in the day, most tickers, that's why I showed this one to let you know, even tickers that can continue to run, where's most of the volume at? Right, yeah. Back to my beautiful CREX trade again. And this can be any play. Notice how dead it was, volume dying off in the squeeze. You know, that want to know that with most traders, you know, when the mob is back, and I'm about to get into that, notice that with trades, right? We can be stocks and tickers like this where we're less than 100,000 shares traded in some of these candles. We're real low. And then boom, break the downtrend right there. Volume can come back in a blink of an eye. Notice where the volume is, and notice what you need to then be doing and what we're doing opposite here. Whereas then we may be shorting or maybe looking to go shorter, maybe not thinking this is going to happen. As soon as this volume comes in and the biggest volume candles of the day, the volume's back, the mob's back. You know, look to now go long. This is now not a shorting opportunity, kind of like SRRA yesterday. It was more of a long opportunity. It was not a short opportunity. Volume equals mob equals volume. You know, mob equals spikes, volume equals spikes. So we have neither, we're not going to get much movement. And so that's where you can even tell, like right here, look where the mob and volume comes in, where it leaves it, where the mob and volume comes in and when it leaves it. Notice that when it leaves it, that's kind of when you want to, if you're not shorting, you need to stay away. You're not looking for bounce play opportunities. If anything, look to know, I say look to know, but know maybe your bounces aren't going to be that big. Of course, it's a little bit bigger mover. It still ends up being a decent bounce. Not that I like the area that much right there. It's decent. It to me should have been in. There was a little bit one right here at the $12 area, and the VWAP got a little bit of a bounce there. Even this was the best bounce in the end, but this area, really? 11.5? What? 11? Okay, 11.5 here or there, whatever. But it was $1. That was the biggest bounce we saw with this, and of course, that was kind of, this dripped off the rest of the day. But at the time, I just wanted to kind of take a shot of where you can see plays like this, where mob comes in, it leaves. Don't trade it. Don't worry about it. Now mob's back in. Now you can look to go long or wait for it to find tops and get the shorts in, because what? There's volume to be had. There's a there's a movability. There's profitability, essentially. And I'm going to get in part 2 of this lesson, but I am going to make a part 2 of this full lesson, and noticing not only volume in different areas and when to trade that volume and how to look at it intermittently in between each candle, and then also with the mob and what to do in certain setups and when to notice when to trade them. And so there's that one, and this want to get into this one real quick because it goes right along with it. How to spot when the mob arrives. Kind of the same thing. I just went over this. That's why I love getting a boom right into this right here. So this is, of course, a little bit, I've done this lesson before in the past. Want to make sure it's recorded though. And go back to just Revlon. Of course, it doesn't matter the ticker. I mean, yes, Revlon, yes, cosmetics here. We know certain areas of where mobs come in and where the mob goes away, right? Break of 875 especially, we know in this first area moving up, whew, we go flying up. Where's the next area? 10. We break 10. What's going to happen? Now again, everyone's going like, where has this play been? And AK, where have these plays been? Yeah, exactly, right? We haven't had these plays, but this is when you know the mobs in certain plays. We have what volume? We have certain, say maybe 10, 15, 30,000 shares traded. We get anything over 100,000 shares, which is the first set of dotted lines there. That's the mob. We've got volume. We've got some movement. You can see when the mob's there and then when it's not. Now, all this is selling, but then look how the mob immediately goes right down to less than 100,000 shares traded per minute. When's the mob come back? We're getting close here. We're not only trending back up, but look at the volume. It's getting close to 100,000 shares traded a minute. Then we really start getting the mob back as 1, 2, 3, 4 in a row, I should say. Get boom, 100,000 plus, 100,000 plus. Now it's 2K plus, or 200K plus, 200K plus. Mob's back, right? Mob is now coming back, breaking $10, breaking the VWAP. Notice those areas. Notice that, hey, mob's not really here for at this stock, in my opinion, about $100,000 or 100,000 shares or less traded a minute. Would be no mob. Anything over 100,000 shares traded a minute, and definitely more, you've got some mob potential. And so that's where you've got to notice with some of these plays. And so that's why even afterward, you can tell still has some mob, but what's happening? The mob's slowly dwindling back away from it to where the longer you stick around in this, you're chasing the bounce and chasing the mob essentially, and you're not going to get much profit out of it. IMRN, here's now kind of setups to go through each and one of these. Break of the VWAP, these U-shapes that kind of happen, and they're slow and steady at times. We've seen these recently, stocks that kind of this is kind of choppy volume, but stocks that spike up in pre-market never can find that area again, waiting for them to U-shape, at least do something. Here's when something of some sort gets a little bit of that, where over the open area would be first to kind of U-shape, get over that, then the break of the VWAP. What happens when you break that VWAP right there? Look how much volume comes bursting into this play. Crazy, right? Nothing early on in the morning, then immediately start testing the VWAP and getting close to it, and then when we do break it, woof, look at all the volume that comes in. Love this perfect mob shift. This is a beautiful mob shift team. So what was this first ticker? Let me get back so you can see it perfectly here. IMAX. So this is back to IMAX because this is perfect. IMAC is running first part of the day. This is back, back in 2020. This is what we're looking at to start the day. Nice little move, 150ish area up to the 250 area. But let's look what happens right at 8:50. Right at 20 minutes after the opening bell, as you can tell. Let's see what happens. We had been waiting on AKER to come out because it had news. It was halted up in news in pre-market. As you can tell, halted up with news in pre-market. We were waiting for it to come out, which we all knew it was going to come out when? At 8:50. Look how the mob immediately goes from this sell-off, cracking the VWAP, to right over here. Talk about a mob shift and a half, right, team? That's a beautiful mob shift. Beautiful right here. So Acre goes live, has the mob up until about, I would call it about, 9:15 my time, which is 45 minutes after the opening bell. Watch around 45 minutes after the opening bell. Then that was on this day. Shippers start spiking up. Look at 9:15 moving forward to about 9:25 my time. Boom. There was other shippers. I don't think I got them all on here, but nope, I did. There were multiple. But shippers start spiking up. There was one or two others. I forgot which other ones they were. They start spiking up. And so you can just, and I think after that, then we went back. It was either the Acre or the IMAC. It was one of the two. Then we went back to again. And it wasn't a big spike, but it was a little small one. And so I didn't add it to this. But you can see mob right on the dot, almost minute-wise, how shifts of mob can happen just like that, team. Hopefully that makes sense and you can see that. G-Tech, God, this nasty, gross mover. This was even from back in Hook. Oh my gosh, team, we've traded this multiple times. G-Tech. We traded this in 2020 as well. So we've traded this 2 times in November. I just now realized that because we just traded this last November and it's the same choppy, up and down, erratic mover. So G-Tech, mob play at times, right, ends up being a trend line play. So have a lot of the mob at this point in time. You can see some mob comes back later on, but for the most part, it just kind of becomes this little trend line play. First one cracks, then we form a new trend line, right? And so one of those ones where we have to reform the trend line, but it kind of gets mobs at times, right? We see that all the time where we see a stock get the mob, goes away, and all of a sudden comes back again, maybe goes away, maybe it comes back for a third time. Very few far between where we get stocks to hold up all day. We don't get that too often. But then secondly, to get multiple mob shifts. Here's this beautiful CREX cracks. Where's the mob, team? Where's the mob? I just went over this one. I think we know. This is one of those ones that really had it all day. Mostly we know in the flag pop, flag pop, flag pop, flag pop. Last bit of bouncing here we can see. And then look at the end of the day where, team, it's pretty much yelling at you right off the board, especially if I had it, in red and white, or red and white. If I had it in the red and the green. HOVF, here's another one. HOFV, I should say, HOFV. So kind of mob I'd say for the first hour of the day, but here's really mob round 1, right? Then it kind of dies off. You can tell there's about a 10-15 minute time frame where I guarantee you we were looking at other tickers for a minute. We'd crack the VWAP, deck, and what we'd be thinking and saying at that time frame. All right, team, let's look at other tickers. Let's look at other tickers. Boom, mob round 2, right? Whammy, and I'm talking about super round 2, and then holds it for a good 30 minutes. Now, it had it overall really for an hour, but you can tell it really did. It lost it here for a good 10 minutes. It lost it here again for about a good 10 minutes. Why? Because it's kind of slowing down, right? Slowing down, then boom, right on up. Same thing here, right? We move up, down, move up, down, right? So you go up to those areas, and it's after the pullback. So we had our spike, and when it pulled back, kind of almost like flags, kind of in a way, when you look at the poll, this was the poll with all the mob. Then look how the volume dies off after the pullback. Poll spikes up. This ends up being kind of the flag of that pull, the pullback, but the flag of that pull. Look at the low volume, and then boom, one last spike up, and then we really kind of lost volume the rest of the day. Beautiful. Love this one, IMRNs. I think this was IMRN again. U-shaped breakout. Had this beautiful, as you can tell, spike at the opening part of the day with the flag being created and formed right there. Beautiful U-shape right here, team, getting closer and closer and closer at the end here at the top of what? The VWAP. Break open of the VWAP. Then we break the open here. You can see the open's right around $9, which was right about right here, which we hesitated, was the second place we hesitated at. Beside the VWAP, then it was game on from there. Now, we did kind of run into some resistance here, as you can tell, right through this area. But boom, then we halted up at 1381, and then we were off to the races. Beautiful U-shape, though. Where's the mob at? Again, most likely early on, this, of course, early on in the market opening, so there's the mob there, but it dumps off. That's mostly selling mob. Then there's nothing, no mob. Slowly working its way back up, and where's the mob return when we get close to completing this U-shape, especially when we do what? Break the U-shape, and especially when we break the open of the day. Look at the volume burst, team. So notice when the mob is there, when the volume is there, and when those areas, and when they will be there. You're not going to get any mob bursts or volume. I mean, unless few and far between, you're going to get those random movers, which we see, that rando volume, that I call it, out of nowhere right here at the low, boof, and it's like halted up at 875. very few and far between. This is what we're waiting for. And where's that mob going to come in at? Breaking of the view op, breaking of the open area, breaking of all these upper shadows right here. You know what I mean? Boom, boom, boom. That's where the mob's coming in at. That's where the volume is going to come in at. Hopefully that makes sense. I'm going to get another round 2 of this, but that was round 1 of essentially not only how to find the volume, but not only how to use and find the mob and when to take trades and when to be taking trades, when to kind of back off and know when there's not much mob and when the mob is there, and that is your time to take those trades.